Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, your number one spot for insightful political commentary and deep dives into Africa's most defining moments. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating chapter in South Africa's political journey, from Mbeki to Zuma, a tale of two leadership styles and South Africa's political crossroads. This is more than just a story about two presidents, it's a case study in how leadership, ideology, and public trust shape the destiny of a nation. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear what you think about South Africa's political evolution. Let's dive right in. South Africa's democratic history has been marked by moments of great promise and great peril. And perhaps no period captures this tension more vividly than the transition from Thabo Mbeki to Jacob Zuma. On one hand, a scholarly technocrat with a vision for African renaissance. On the other, a populist leader who captured hearts but later shattered public trust. Let's start with Thabo Mbeki. Mbeki served as South Africa's president from 1999 to 2008. Often described as cerebral and calculated, Mbeki was no ordinary politician. He was an intellectual, an economist by training, and a man who believed in rational governance. His hallmark policy, the GEAR framework, growth, employment, and redistribution, aimed to create macroeconomic stability, attract foreign investment, and set the country on a sustainable path forward. He championed initiatives like NEPAD, the New Partnership for Africa's Development, placing South Africa at the center of continental diplomacy. Under Mbeki, the country saw a steady rise in GDP, increased international recognition, and improved investor confidence. To many global observers, Mbeki looked like the right man to modernize the nation. But Mbeki's leadership wasn't without controversy. One of his most criticized decisions was his denialism during the HIV/AIDS crisis. Despite overwhelming scientific consensus, Mbeki questioned the link between HIV and AIDS and resisted the rollout of antiretroviral therapy. This decision had catastrophic consequences, with studies suggesting that over 300,000 lives could have been saved with proper intervention. Additionally, Mbeki's style of governance, marked by formality and distance, often alienated grassroots communities. He was seen as out of touch, an elitist intellectual unable or unwilling to engage with the pressing concerns of the poor and working class. This disconnect would eventually cost him. Enter Jacob Zuma. Zuma's ascent to the presidency in 2009 wasn't just political, it was emotional. He embodied the anti-elite sentiment that had grown within the ANC and across the country. Where Mbeki was distant, Zuma was approachable. Where Mbeki intellectualized, Zuma danced and sang. He portrayed himself as a man of the people, a leader who understood the pain of poverty because he lived it. Zuma leveraged his charisma to build support among trade unions, youth leagues, and ANC branches disillusioned with Mbeki's leadership. His supporters viewed him as a champion of the marginalized, someone who would shift the balance of power and wealth. But Zuma's presidency quickly descended into infamy. From the moment he took office, questions swirled about his ethics, his associates, and his intentions. What followed was nearly a decade of allegations, cover-ups, and, eventually, full-blown scandals. The term state capture became part of everyday conversation, referring to the systematic corruption and manipulation of state institutions for private gain, especially by the Gupta family, Zuma's controversial business allies. Millions of rands were siphoned from public coffers. State-owned enterprises like Eskom and South African Airways were gutted. Oversight institutions were weakened, and trust in government collapsed. Under Zuma, South Africa saw rising unemployment, economic stagnation, and a growing sense of disillusionment among the very people who once saw him as the hero. For many, it felt like betrayal. So what does this contrast between Mbeki and Zuma teach us? First, it reminds us that leadership isn't just about who speaks the loudest or connects the fastest. Competence matters. Mbeki's administration, while flawed, was grounded in long-term strategy. Zuma's, while emotionally resonant, collapsed under the weight of mismanagement and greed. Second, South Africa's story shows how internal party politics can drastically alter national direction. The ANC's shift from Mbeki to Zuma was fueled by factionalism, battles not just over policy, but power. And those internal dynamics ended up shaping the entire country's fate. Third, and perhaps most crucially, it underscores the importance of public accountability and institutional integrity. Once trust in leadership erodes, it's hard to rebuild. Zuma's era left deep scars on the economy, on governance, and on the nation's psyche. Today, South Africa still grapples with the aftermath. But there's also hope. Investigations, reforms, and a renewed push for transparency have begun to change the narrative. Civil society is more vocal, the media remains vigilant, and a new generation of leaders is rising, ones who, hopefully, can learn from the past. So where does South Africa go from here? The answer lies in finding a leadership model that blends the best of both worlds. A leader who can think strategically and connect emotionally. Someone who understands macroeconomic frameworks but also knows what it's like to live without electricity or clean water. A leader who sees governance not as a means of self-enrichment but as a platform for service. As South Africans prepare for future elections, these lessons should remain front and center. The journey from Mbeki to Zuma is not just a tale of two men, it's a mirror reflecting the hopes, fears, and responsibilities of a young democracy. That's it for today's video. Thank you for joining us for this in-depth look at one of South Africa's most defining political chapters. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. We want to know, what do you think South Africa needs in its next leader? Let's get the conversation going. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and as always, see you next time.